Welcome into the 0-1 Broncos breakdown after Denver fell to the Raiders 17-16. We've got some winners and losers to go through, along with some very important injury notes to hit on. But, of course, 2 straight years, the Broncos lose 17-16 on the opening weekend. But, unfortunately, before we get to our injury updates, we do have some winners and losers. We do have some injury updates to get to on today's show. Let's start off with the latest on Caden Sterns, as Ian Rapoport tweeted out that Broncos safety Caden Sterns is expected to be out for the season with a torn patella tendon, source says. The young DB had Perine. Yeah, we all know. I mean, it sucks to see, right? I've been a big Caden Sterns fan. I loved every time he filled in for Justin Simmons last year, and unfortunately, injuries held him to only 5 games in 2022. But Caden Sterns definitely felt like he could be a future safety tandem along with Justin Simmons. And now we get we get robbed of that opportunity, and Caden Sterns gets robbed of playing for 2023, and this was going to be a big season for him. Now, and some other injury news here. Greg Dulcich, he got an MRI on his hamstring. Remember, Greg Dulcich missed much of last season at the start with a hamstring injury that knocked him out for all of training camp and preseason and the first 5 weeks of the season. So when Greg Dulcich came back, he was impactful. He was a very important part of the passing offense. But this hamstring injury, I guess, continues to follow him as he left at the end of the first half with a hamstring injury. And that tossed Adam Trautman, who was already the starter, by the way, into a bigger role, I guess. So Adam Trautman, we'll look at some other stats later on. You can expect to see more of the former New Orleans Saint and Dayton Flyer because he is now this team's top receiving tight end option. And I bet we're all wishing Albert O was on the bench right now because he could have filled in very nicely for Mr. Dulcich. But with Caden Sterns and Greg Dulcich looking like they're going to miss some extended period of time, Sterns much longer than Dulcich, who is the bigger loss in your opinion? They are both kind of fringe starters, right? Caden Sterns and Kareem Jackson, and then Greg Dulcich and Adam Trautman. So which player do you feel like is a bigger blow, is a bigger loss to this team? Of course, Sterns for the whole season is going to weigh in a little bit more. But if Dulcich goes to short-term IR and it knocks him out for 4 weeks, does that, overtake Caden Sterns? I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section. Now let's get into my winners and losers after this losing performance by the Broncos. My first loser is Vance Joseph. This defense sucked, right? Usually it's the opposite in Denver. But au contraire, for once, this defense had nothing to really show for outside of a Kareem Jackson interception in the red zone. Ultimately, Denver produced a whopping 0 amount of sacks, 3 QB hits, and only forced the Raiders to punt 1 time out of 5 drives. I'm not going to count the kneel down at the end of the first half. That's a Mickey Mouse kneel down. So 5 drives, you force 1 punt, 1 red zone interception, which I don't want to take away from this defense, but also Jimmy Garoppolo just forced a pass when he didn't have to. If he just throws that out of bounds, the Raiders pick up 3 more points most likely. So 0 sacks, 3 QB hits, just never felt like the defense was there to make a big-time play, especially when they needed it in the fourth quarter. Now, Sean Payton spoke to the media today over Zoom, and here's what he said on Denver getting 0 sacks. Well, look, we're all for pressure, and obviously it's an important stat line in our league when it comes to hurrying these quarterbacks. The ball does come out quick with Jimmy, and it comes out quick route design-wise. Now, no one got to Jimmy Garoppolo yesterday. Not Randy Gregory, not Jonathan Cooper, not Frank Clark. Zach Allen had 1 tackle for loss, had a QB hit too. But you can see the snaps being spread out as well. Randy Gregory, the most amongst all edge rushers, if you will, with 40. But look at Frank Clark. I mean, playing 25 snaps compared to Jonathan Cooper at 38. I know Nick Bonito played like 25 snaps, 25% of the plays. Zach Allen, the most of the bunch up there on the defensive line, but that defensive line rotation is not as deep as the outside linebacker rotation is, so that does not surprise me all that much. But like I said, for the first time in a long time, like almost 10 years now, good offense, bad defense. And it's a little bit cruel because we've been begging for good offense, and ultimately, Denver had 16 points to show for, but what the box score doesn't tell you is Denver only had 6 possessions on offense. So 16 points on 6 possessions, sure, you could do better, but also that's not the worst thing in the world. So for the first time in a very long time, good offense, but bad defense. Now, before we get to the rest of my winners and losers, make sure to subscribe. Do me a big solid and hit that sub button down below. We're trying to get to our next milestone, 16,000 subs. But the reason why is if we get more subscribers, I can do more watch parties on Sundays. But unfortunately, the studio space is divvied up to the channels with the biggest or the most amount of subscribers. So we got to get more subs so I can do more watch parties for all of you at home. Moving on to my first winner coming out of this one, I'm going to go with Russell Wilson. I know this might not be a unanimous decision, but this is coming from someone who's definitely been fairly critical of Russ over the last year or so after 2022. And Russell Wilson, I thought, looked really sharp in this game. He completed nearly 80% of his passes, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Sure, that 177 passing yards doesn't jump out as a big number, and that kind of signals there was no big play or anything like that. But Russell Wilson was sharp, he was accurate with the football, and I thought he made good decisions. Now, Denver's receiving corps just didn't get it going ever. Samaje Perine was your leading receiver. Your backup running back should never be your leading receiver with 37 yards, mind you. Adam Trotman was next up with 34 yards. Courtland Sutton got a touchdown. That was great to see in the red zone along with Lil Jordan Humphrey. But he had 32 yards. Brandon Johnson had 2 big first downs worth 31 yards total. No big plays, but they're coming. Like, this is not something, if we're talking overreactions or panic meter, I'm very nervous about. The reason being is Denver nearly had 2 big plays. Philip Dorsett couldn't stay in bounds. That would have been a big play. Samaje Perine stepped out of bounds on a good play, but it could have been a lot better. That was a big play taken away. So twice players just having those week 1 kind of fuzzies where they're like, oh yeah, I forgot, I can't step on the white line. Like, okay, I'm going to remember that moving forward now. So I'm not too worried about the big play factor not being there in week 1. They also didn't have Jerry Jeudy. That's probably worth something. Can we all agree? If Jerry Jeudy's out there, this team might win, right? This team might get that big play. This team might go and score 7 points on that last drive instead of settling for 3 in the red zone. Like, that's the kind of Jerry Jeudy impact that we sorely missed yesterday. And in a 1-point game, he's worth a point. Well, Wil Lutz couldn't get that last point, but Jerry Jeudy could have. So I'm not concerned about this offense not having the big play factor. Now, what I am concerned about is when I waste my time and I start stressing over trying to find tickets. And with Game Time, you actually don't have to stress at all. So start getting the best tickets for the best prices, lowest price guaranteed, thanks to today's sponsor, Game Time. They've got awesome deals for Broncos country. And one of my favorite features about Game Time is you can actually see with your own 2 eyes where you will be sitting and what your view will be once you get to your seats. And Game Time is also giving Broncos country an opportunity to pick up $20 off when you go download the Game Time app and you use our promo code BroncosChat. Now, I personally used Game Time 2 weeks ago, a week ago at this point, to go to a college football game between UNC and South Carolina. And thanks to Game Time, not only did I get $20 off, but I knew exactly what my seats would look like. I knew exactly what my view would look like. So I was sitting in the best possible spot for my budget. So if you are going to Denver for a game, or let's say you want to go to any other sporting event, comedy, theater, concerts, whatever's going on in your town, make sure Game Time is the place you go for last-minute tickets for the lowest price guaranteed. So download the Game Time app today. Use the promo code BroncosChat for $20 off. Terms apply, but $20 off with your first purchase. Download the app. All the information you need is in the comments and the description of today's video. So shout out to Game Time once again for making today's show possible. Go show them some love and help support the show. Moving on to my second loser, Damarri Mathis. Get him off the field. Get him off the roster. Damarri Mathis was unwatchable yesterday. And when we went into the draft process, like, we all go back in time for a moment, there were 2 question marks for Denver. Edge rusher and corner. Now, if Denver believed that Damarri Mathis could be a CB2 opposite of Pat Surtain, well, that degraded the amount they had to go and use a premium pick on a cornerback. Ultimately, they showed a little bit of trust in Damarri Mathis because their first selection was not a cornerback. Maybe it should have been. Damarri Mathis yesterday was targeted 9 times. 8 receptions, 95 yards allowed, and 2 touchdowns allowed. Riley Moss, start warming up, buddy. Let's get the call to the bullpen going. Hopefully that sports hernia injury is behind you now because he might get tossed into a starting role sooner rather than later. Like Damarri Mathis is only entering his second season, but listen, Jakobi Meyers cannot cook you that badly. It's okay if it's Davante Adams, which I don't really understand. Maybe someone smarter than me can explain this to me. Why was Pat Surtain not on Davante Adams the entire game? Like, you might think if you just casually watched at the bar or something, oh, Pat Surtain, he locked down Davante Adams. And Davante Adams had a, average day, below average for his standards. But all of his receptions, almost all of his yards, came when Damarri Mathis was on Davante Adams. Whose idea was that? Honestly, I want a name and address. Was this Vance's idea? I don't know, but it's an awful decision to put Damarri Mathis anywhere close to Davante Adams. He couldn't handle Jakobi Meyers. Jakobi Meyers literally forfeited a game last year against the Raiders. And here he is looking like premium all-pro Calvin Johnson because Damarri Mathis is on him. An overall PFF grade of 27.8, that's not easy to accomplish. That is an extremely low grade. When it comes to PFF, I always say add 10 points, and that's like your school letter grade. Imagine getting a 37 on your test. Like, what? 37? It's multiple choice. Just gets a little bit better. Damarri Mathis, unplayable at this rate. When you look at Denver's cornerback room, I don't know exactly who they want to turn to. When Williams returns from IR in a couple of weeks, maybe they bump Bassie over to the outside corner spot. Maybe you give McMillan a shot. Moreau, Smith, Moss, I don't know. That's up to the coaching staff in the week of practice to figure out who our next best option is. But Damarri Mathis at CB2 is thin ice, and that is not an overreaction. But what's your panic level on the Broncos defense? No sacks, spotty cornerback play. I mean, Pat Surtain and Simmons and K-Jack, they're reliable. They did their part, but horrible pass rush, horrible play from Damarri Mathis, solid linebacker play. Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton did so well. Drew Sanders didn't even get to see the field yesterday on defense. So my panic level, scale of 1 to 10, I would put it at a solid 6.6. I'm at a 6.6 right now, right? No pass rush whatsoever. And it's not like the Raiders have a top 10 offensive line, mind you. And Damarri Mathis is a major liability. And you better believe that next week the Commanders with Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, and the week after that, Miami, Chicago, like you have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney. There are some good wide receiver duos coming up. Pat Surtain is tremendous, but he literally cannot cover two guys at once. That's just a little bit out of his reach. So Mathis cannot be a big red flag on this defense that everyone just picks on for the entirety of the year. Moving on to my second and final winner, Samaje Perine. We hadn't seen a ton from Perine in the preseason, and deservingly so. He didn't get a lot of attention because all eyes were on Javonte Williams as he made his miraculous recovery. But I thought Samaje Perine looked really sharp out there on Sunday. When you compare Williams to Perine, in a lot of ways, just going box score hunting, Perine was the better back, right? I mean, 41 rushing yards, but off of 8 carries, so an extra full yard compared to Javonte Williams, 37 receiving yards as well. Samaje Perine definitely showed what Denver was looking for when they signed him, which was that ability to be a rusher and a receiver and help open things up. Now, I thought this tweet from Zach Stevens was really interesting, and I wanted you all to see it as well. Samaje Perine said the 1-2 punch of he and Javonte Williams is working out great. Said down the stretch that could wear out defenses in the third and fourth quarters. No doubt about it. I mean, we're not just talking about the third and fourth quarters of week 1 and week 2, but the third and fourth quarters of the schedule. When we get into November and December, and those big fellas up front, 200, 300-pound guys, it's hard for them to keep moving at that rate for this long. So Samaje Perine and Javonte Williams both playing, I think, the identical amount of snaps of 45. They're going to keep their legs fresh. It won't be great for fantasy owners, but no one gives a shit about your fantasy team anyway. And Samaje Perine is going to be a pretty good workhorse back for Denver. Offensive line needs to get it going, though. If I could add another loser, I would, and it would be the offensive line. But lucky for them, there were bigger losers that came out of this game. But altogether, Denver invested a lot of money in this offensive line, right? Mike McGlinchey got a huge, nearly $90 million contract, and he got his lunch money stolen from him by Max Crosby. Now, Max Crosby's going to do that to a lot of people, but when you have an $87+ million right tackle, you spend $87 million to not have your money stolen by Max Crosby, right? Sure, Crosby can get a win or two in, but Crosby was dominating Mike McGlinchey. Ben Powers at left guard, 57.1 overall grade, the second lowest of the bunch. Meanwhile, it's good to see Quinn Meinerz continue to be one of the best underappreciated guards in football. And then I like the bounce back from Garett Bolles as well as, we're talking about Javonte Williams with a miraculous recovery. How about Garett Bolles? The dude literally broke his leg less than 12 months ago, and he's out here starting week 1. My third and final loser, I'm going to go with Wil Lutz. I don't want to pile on the dude because ultimately kickers are so in between the ears and got to get some good mojo going for them. And I don't want to say I told you so, but I kind of told you so. Like, Brett Maher was a better kicker last year than Wil Lutz, and everyone, I think, over-panicked or whatever, overreacted to one horrible postseason game against the Bucs. And here's Wil Lutz stinking it up. He went 1 for 2, cost him the game. 1 for 2 extra points, cost him the game. If he makes one of those 2 misses, at the very worst, Denver goes to overtime, right? Makes the extra point. We got a tied 17-17 ball game. Instead, Denver loses by 1. Denver, if Wil Lutz makes the field goal in the second half, well, Denver's potentially winning this game. But no, they lose by 1. This one came, I don't want to put it all on Wil Lutz because the pass rush was bad, but you can't leave 4 points on the table. I mean, it's just 4 points, just throwing it away. 4 points, lit on fire. And Sean Payton literally got Wil Lutz because he said he wants a kicker he can trust. How do you trust a guy who just took 4 points and flushed it down the toilet? Unbelievable. All right, that's going to do it for us on today's show. Hopefully next Monday, vibes are high coming off a win against the Commies. Denver is 1-1. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Enjoy Monday Night Football tonight, and we'll see everyone later.